Super.
Yeah. Olódùmarè ó dọwọ́ rẹ̀ o. Ọ̀gẹ̀gẹ̀ àgbáyégún. Alábàáláṣẹ aláṣẹ làbá. Ó dọwọ́ rẹ̀ o. Ìwọ ló mọ ìdí tá a fi wá síbi lónìí. Ìwọ náà dẹ̀ ni à ń wò pé o máa dúró tì wá. Olódùmarè ẹlẹ́dàá ọ̀run ẹlẹ́dàá ayé gbogbo àwọn irúnmọlẹ̀ lóde ọ̀run irúnmọlẹ̀ nínú ayé ẹ bá bá a péjọ o gbogbo bá a ṣe fẹ́ ohun tá a fẹ́ ṣe ẹ tì wá lẹ́yìn ẹ má tì wá lójú ẹ má jẹ́ kí àbámọ̀ kó gbẹ̀yìn ọ̀rọ̀ wa gbogbo bá ti ń ṣe nípa òmìnira àwọn àwa aláwọ̀ dúdú òmìnira là ń tọrọ òmìnira là ń fẹ́ fún wa ní òmìnira o jẹ́ kí gbogbo ohun tá a fẹ́ ṣe lónìí kó mú kí ilé wa ilẹ̀ wa kó gba òmìnira nítòótọ́ gbogbo ẹ̀yin agbára lóde ọ̀run agbára nínú ayé ẹ bá péjọ o gbogbo ẹ̀ tá a bá parí ẹ̀ ẹ̀yin náà la máa wá fi àbọ̀ wá bá ẹ̀yin náà la máa wá sọ fún bá a ṣe sọ yìí bẹ́ẹ̀ ní kórí o àdúpẹ́ òpin ẹ ti gbọ́ o ẹ túbọ̀ máa gbọ́ tiwa ó ti rí bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ́lá alágbàwí wa Ọ̀rúnmìlà lọ́lá Ọbàtálá lọ́lá Ògún lọ́lá Ṣàngó àyẹ́rẹ́ iná àkàtà ìyẹ́rì lọ́lá alábàáláṣẹ lọ́lá aláṣẹ làbá ó ti rí bẹ́ẹ̀ o.
Okay. So today we are here again, and my name is Judy, and we have a special guest in our midst, a professor. We should introduce himself.
Yes, I'm Obafemi Jegede.
Yes.
Professor, you're welcome.
Welcome to our midst. It's an honor to have you here.
So much.
And like you all know,
Tony B.
Mazi
Anthony.
And this is Kiswensida. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And our topic for today is trauma or intergenerational trauma. It came as a result of our last episode where we were asking if colonization or colonialism could, or the aftermath of colonialism on Africans or ex-colonized people, can we say that we are still suffering from, some traumas that we haven't acknowledged? And before we start, I'd like to define trauma, even though my co-hosts here were against me doing that, but I just feel like, in layman's term, and not everybody would be able to say, when they say, is everything about trauma? But let's just define trauma before we begin. So here it says, trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event, like an accident, rape, or natural disaster. Immediately after the event, shock and denial are typical. Keynote denial, I like that word. Long-term reactions include unpredictable emotions, flashbacks, strained relationships, and even physical symptoms like headaches or nausea. So that's the, definition of trauma. But we all have our definitions of trauma, and I'd like our professor here, Obafemi, to usher us into the topic, into the conversation.
Yeah. Trauma is always more disturbing when it comes as a result of humiliation. Or can we say it's long-lasting? The trauma of somebody who had an accident may not last long when he's cured properly. The trauma of somebody who probably was or faced an exam will not last long when he passes the exam after all. But the trauma of humiliation will last long. The trauma of inferiorization, because it's not erasable. It doesn't look like there's a way out of it. Sometimes a poor person who has this poverty background, and that poverty traumatizes him or her. Do you know that when he becomes rich, the trauma may not even leave him? So that is when it is physical, it doesn't last long, as in when it is psychological. And I think that's my major concern here.
So you would say poverty is also a form of trauma.
Yeah. No matter how rich you are, if you start from a poverty background and you later become a millionaire, the trauma of poverty is still able to follow.
Even when you
are so rich. But if somebody slaps you and you are traumatized, immediately the slap is gone. The trauma may not last long. So psychological trauma is what I'm talking about today. It's the real trauma, and it's much, much more, disturbing, more destructive, more enduring than the physical trauma.
Okay. Oh, okay. What I want to talk about mainly is about the definition of trauma, because everything we do, we must have a position at which we define anything. Judy defined trauma from Eurocentric point of view, which has to do with psychological perspective. But I know that some people define trauma from cultural point of view, or you can say they are Afrocentric about it. For example, we all know the case of suicide, which is a Eurocentric perspective. We say suicide is a kind of a psychological illness or a last stage of depression. But some people who define trauma from a cultural point of view will see it from another. They won't even mention anything psychological. For example, a case of Uganda, where you see with these CENs and traditional way of seeing trauma, or seeing it as a lineage or a family something, that suicide is not really a psychological sickness. It's a kind of a cultural thing, or a kind of evil spirit in a family that people tend to commit suicide. Like maybe every 5 years, people die from suicide. So these people, they don't define it from this point of view. So that is the only thing I want to add before we progress, so that we can know our position of what we are saying. Keith, do you have anything to say about it?
I don't have anything more to add right now.
Okay, Judy, let's carry on.
There's something that came out, the word living in denial. It's actually a lot of people, especially us as Africans, we tend to try to macho things up when we, for example, the incidence of suicide, when we would say, oh, it's maybe an attack from the village, or maybe demonic possess or maybe being possessed by some demons, because it's not seen as a normal thing for someone to want to commit suicide, or some people having symptoms of maybe bipolar or psychological problems. Especially in Africa, we have not been able to properly address this aspect of the health aspect, this aspect of health or healing. I would use these words, because we tend to make everything all I would say we are living in denial. And that's one thing, when you're living in denial, there is no way you can acknowledge that thing is present. There is no way, if you're saying, oh, maybe you are feeling headache and you are just living in denial, saying, oh no, I'm not having a headache, it's just some it will pass. It will pass. Yeah. And relating it now to us as Africans and the aftermath of colonization. I was having a conversation with someone, and she said, and I was like, oh, well, we cannot continue to blame everything on colonization. Well, colonization is over. And we are meant, as Africans, we should like grow past it now and begin to forge our way out of it. And then she said, oh no, we cannot pretend like colonization never happened. The truth is that it happened. We don't know what would have happened if it did not happen. It happened. We cannot say, oh, let's what if colonization didn't happen? Just like when we talk about things like, aftermath of colonization, and people be like, you need to move on from it. Move on, it's gone. After all, and Black people also sold each other to slavery. It wasn't just white people that did it. We also sold ourselves. So we should grow up. Like they're trying to tell you to macho up, man up, and move on. Just like the End SARS protest that happened in Nigeria in October 2020. Was it 2020?
Yeah.
In 2020, yeah. And when there was, the youth were asking, well, how did all of these things happen? And we wanted accountability. We were only peacefully protesting, and we never pointed guns at anyone before it escalated. And then they said it was riots, and that's why they had to involve the military. And then a certain governor in a state in Nigeria said, oh, you people should move on from it. Like it already happened. So you people should move on. And then it triggered a lot of people because people died. A lot of people died. A lot of people were injured. Some people are in asylum right now because they haven't gotten over that traumatic event. And this is just something that happened recently. How much more something that happened, for years. It was the slavery happened for 500 years. And now nobody wants us to talk about it. When we I believe some people watching us right now will be like, oh, can we just stop? Can we move on from this talk already? Colonization.
It's necessary to be talked about because people Africans I talk if from my country perspective, Burkina Faso, slavery is not I don't think a lot of people are truly aware of the consequences that it had inflicted in us as a people, right? There's this I remember I had this conversation with my uncle that was I think 3 years ago, and he asked me, do you know the black code? In French it's called le code noir. And I was, no, I don't know. And he was shocked because at that time I was still in my 20s. And he was, you, a black man, African man, right? An intellectual, you don't know what the black code is. He said, go on Google, type black code and see what it is. And for those who don't know, the black code was a law book held by white slave master onto how to treat the black African slave. A black person, African person, whether it was a man, a woman, or even a child, was like this thing. An object. The same way I sit on this sofa, you can sit on an African like that as a white person. The same way you can put incense on a table, you can do that the same way. I mean, this table doesn't feel pain, right? So if you put fire onto it will not say anything, but you can, a human being, feel pain.
Are we saying they were naive those days? The slave masters, they were naive of Africans, whether they feel pain or not.
They
knew, but they convinced themselves, in multiple areas, spiritually. I mean, I'm not gonna go into that, but the curse of I forgot the exact chapter in the Bible, but some people say that black people are suffering now because there was one of Noah's son who saw Noah naked and he loved the nakedness of his father. And while Noah regained his sobriety, he cursed this son of him who was charcoal skin to be slave forever until the end of time of his brothers. And some people think that that's the reason why black people are slaves, That's quote unquote religion.
Do you know
It
why?
came from the lineage of
why
Noah's.
I asked this question is because if you read in the history, towards the time they want to check if Africa is going to, towards the time of ending slavery, they were making this kind of debate. These people now they have become Christian. Do they have soul? So I think they set a panel of some Archbishop Lascasa and some other people to go and check if, okay, now that they are Christians, they still have their native gods, they are pagans, do they have soul? So that is why I asked. And at the end of the day, the panel went and said, okay, look, they have soul, but they might have a local soul. So what I'm trying to say is that because sometimes I question this thing that can make some people to treat people this way. Is it that they are naive of these people's stake as a human?
Let's not also forget that Frantz Fanon wrote a book titled Wretched of the Earth. And Black people were seen as the wretched of the earth. There are many scholars, white scholars, that have written about, how there are many terminologies that have been used on Black people generally. Black people were not the only people that were colonized, but it seemed like we were the ones that it was like the slavery was so deep because of the color of our skins. And we were seen as lesser human beings than any other beings on earth. And it has to do with the color of the skin.
Yeah.
And
Which is unfair, to be honest.
well, to them, they were explorers. They came to our land and they had never seen Black people before. What would you expect them, like, from their myopic minds? They would be like, oh, what is this? And there's always that positionality that they came from this superior position, and we saw them as, because we were so hospitable. We've always been hospitable, and then we welcomed them into our lands thinking that, oh, these were just, foreigners, without questioning their intentions, without questioning their motives. And that was how we let them in. And then they went back, and then they came back again. And this time around, they came with different motives. The first time was to explore, to see what was happening. And then the second time was, they had already seen what was happening. Like, they were going back to tell the story to their people. And then they came back the second time, and then they were like, oh, okay. So we were like case study to them. Like you said, objects. Yeah. We were not seen as fellow human beings.
Yeah. And this is the thing
I think, you see, in human psychology and cultural psychology, the idea of seeing some people as inferior is never a new thing. In fact, it's natural in man. It's natural that I think that my culture is superior to your own culture.
Yeah.
Just like the Igbo will see Yoruba. Igbo will never think Yoruba is more intelligent than them. Like, neither will Yoruba think that Igbos are more intelligent than them. The tendency to want to put other people under our foot is always there. I would say it is. It is human.
It's a human factor.
But the problem is the extent at which you are able to succeed to demonstrate your superiority. Because the world itself is a conflicting reality. So you have to. So when I conquer you, I become your Lord. If you conquer me, because that's how the world has always been. When the people in Egypt, they conquered the people of Israel. When there was famine all over the world, but Egypt was intelligent enough to have prepared for famine. They had their banks of food, everything. The whole world was coming to where? Coming to Egypt. But Egypt took the advantage. He enslaved everybody. And when they were about to leave, Egypt didn't want them to leave. So by implication, the idea of ethnocentrism is natural. I think I want us to look at it from that point of view. So we win that Oyibo man says that he is superior to us. It's not their problem. It's normal of them. But that we also accept that they are superior to us is what the problem really is.
Where the word trauma comes.
But if we have resisted, it is normal.
We did resist.
If you have succeeded in resisting it, the people of Israel resisted it, and they succeeded. You get the point?
We actually did resist.
But when our resistance didn't work. They
Because
conquered.
they converted us. They said we should leave our
These are all weapons. They succeeded eventually. Even with religion, they didn't only have guns. They have education. Yes. They have language. They have medicine. They use everything. They put together everything. The point is, eventually they succeeded. Eventually. We should discuss from that objective standpoint. They succeeded, and many then too. We should also look at the nature of the colonization itself. Colonization is not a new thing. Every people have been colonized all over the place. The people of Egypt colonized in Israel. How did they do that? How did they treat them? They are made to be building and be working for people, isn't it? They subject them to hard work, isn't it? But how did the European colonize Africa? What is the nature of their own kind of slavery? I don't know whether you get my point. In Africa, there have been slavery, but what was the nature?
I think I have a question, Prof.
Exactly.
My question is, I'm specifically trying to talk about intergenerational trauma.
Exactly.
Because even the case of trauma as making a generalization that all Africans experience trauma today is false, because not all Africans are the descendants of
the people who were enslaved.
Colonialism or slavery. So, but if I should be more specific to people, the descendants of people who were enslaved, they trying to kind of juxtapose this aspect of intergenerational trauma. So how do we kind of, because I know that the trauma is a translation of this wound from generation to generation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because sometimes I was making fun with Judy. I said sometimes when you see an African person who may have had this kind of intergenerational trauma, the reaction, the way they speak, the way they operate, the way they view things, the aesthetics level, everything translates and appears itself in your daily activities. Mm. So, but I am always on the opinion, on the side of healing or a way forward, because now that we are having this conversation because we are asking questions that are we really traumatized or not? Mm. Yeah, it's not that we see it this way, because I also stump or bundle into some kind of explanations. Like you say, people who are traumatized, the indication is that sometimes this aspect of speechlessness, avoidance, they try to not to talk about it. And that is why you say, tell me how you feel. What is your wound? How is it trying to affect you? Mm. You prefer not to talk about it. Mm. So, but now that we have this platform to talk about it, I want to really understand deeply what is your own view, Prof, about this intergenerational trauma.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, the intensity, the nature of the colonization itself. Many parts of the world have been colonized. They follow particular pattern. Or slavery was never something too uncommon in the olden days. Look, imagine a people who were taken in undress over the sea and were thrown into the sea, and you are trauma. A people who were padlocked, whose mouth were padlocked. A people who were, mounted upon like a donkey.
Even kept in concentration camps.
Kept in concentration camp for 400 years, over 400 years, and you expect those people to not to be traumatized generationally. You get the point? People who are taken to sugarcane farm and we are farming for many, many years, and you expect those people not to be traumatized generationally. Apart from that, people who were made to see themselves as inferior permanently, and they are not able to even come out of that kind of inferiority complex, and you expect them not to be traumatized. People who were removed from their cultural background, lineage, whose name was changed, whose identity was changed, whose language was changed for hundreds of years, you expect them not to be traumatized. It's not possible, generationally. If we build, if the story continues, the people of Israel, when they were in Babylon, you see, they were traumatized. How many years did they spend? They spent about 7 years in Babylon.
I don't know if that Bible story is actually, the captivity of children of Israel.
In Babylon?
Some people would even relate it to the African story, saying we are the children, like metaphorically.
No. I think we are just
Israel, because they were in captivity for 400 years.
That was in Egypt.
And, slavery happened. It went on for over 400 years.
That's people who try to make comparisons.
That can do comparison.
Metaphorically say Afrikans.
No, they can't call it Africa.
What he wants to get here is that intergenerational trauma is a
reality. Exactly.
Given
the intensity of the suffering of the people, that even those who experienced this for 70 years in Babylon, they still say by the rivers of Babylon. There we sat down, they were still traumatized, just 70 years, and it wasn't even as heinous. It was as painful. And what did they do in Babylon? They were asked to go and worship one god. They were nothing more. They didn't kill their mouth. They didn't do anything too bad to them. But the Europeans did so. In fact, it was the height of wickedness. They will carry people inside the ship and throw them inside the river. How many hundreds of African people are still in the river?
The women were used as an object of enjoyment.
Exactly. That is the real issue.
Objectification.
That is the real issue. And therefore,
this practice called buck breaking.
And therefore, the trauma is real. The trauma is real.
Yeah. Like I was saying, there was also this practice called buck breaking, which I don't know if you heard about it. Have you heard about it?
No.
Buck breaking. Okay, so the buck breaking practice was when the slave master forced the male slave to have intercourse with either his mother or his sister, his relative, to produce another slave.
Okay, you are saying
like a form of reproduction.
Yeah.
Assuming you find a able-bodied person who is hardworking, you want them to replicate that kind of strength.
Exactly, and they
So you want them to do okay.
And have children, slave children.
I think, to me, if I have to be subjected to sleep with my mother and I do it, I think the reality will never disappear from my eyes.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because you're traumatized forever.
It's generational. Okay. It will be there forever. So we have established the fact that trauma is real. But the question is, what is the implication of this trauma on African, psyche and developmental agenda thinking, and how does it affect Africanness itself? I think that is very, very.
That's a very vital
Even the name Africa, I heard we never even named ourselves. We're never given the opportunity to name anything. It's been from one level of trauma and subjugation to another. From transatlantic to from the trans-Saharan, that was even more traumatic. I read that the men were castrated.
That's why I said not all Africans were enslaved.
But this was still northern Africa. This was in the northern part of Africa. The men were castrated, and then the ones that survived the castration were seen as the strongest slaves. And then the transatlantic, where many Africans were shipped over the Atlantic out of their homelands. But we are only talking now about those that were taken away. What about those that remained back at home? The ones that they took the young ones. They took the younger ones, right, to build plantations, to develop what we see now.
The people that they left at home.
What about those that were left at home?
So people were made childless. People were made fatherless. People were made homeless.
What about that?
Because what you said, there is one proverb in my community that says that he who takes care of a sick person is as more sick,
Sick, yes.
than the person who is actually
Yes,
sick.
there's also a Yoruba thing, like if someone is sick, if you're a caregiver, you're taking care of a sick person, maybe a mother child, paradigm or dynamics. The mother also has to, take some, even though she's not feeling sick, you also have to take care of yourself as you're caring for the sick child, because the possibility that you would also catch the sickness is high.
I
So
have one question,
as the
please.
child is getting well, you also will not be falling sick, because who's going to take care of you? So this way, the trauma is in both ways. And it is still rippling into present day reality. But many people want to. Sorry. I would say, because
This is a very.
It's a free. No,
Yeah.
it's a free.
Everybody is curious to.
many people want to live in denial, and they want us to also
That's the issue, actually.
Many people have chosen to live in denial. It's also a trauma response.
That's
It's not
trauma.
possible.
One of the aspects of trauma response is suppression of emotion. Like what you say, a lot of people try to suppress their emotion. They don't want to talk. But I think one of the good things that we'll talk about, I listen to a lot of people. One of the things that they say as a way of healing is always air your view out, speak it out, embrace the healing. Prof, my question is, if you check people who classify trauma, they say there's childhood trauma, there's adulthood trauma. They make an example, childhood trauma, like in a way that kids who often see their parents fight all the time and they grow up, and this kind of a thing interprets negatively in their lifestyles, or the way they see even the young ones when they become afraid of having boyfriends or girlfriends because they want to repeat what their father,
even getting married, or even having
getting
kids.
married. They are traumatized.
Yeah.
They run away from this job to this job because of what is outplaying itself to their reality. And also people who define adult trauma, they often use example like rape, that they become traumatized about it. And these things make them to find it very difficult to be stable emotionally. Like it is their reality. And they often have this kind of representation in the mind. They are very, very annoyed when they have to repeat themselves over and over, trying to explain to people how they feel. Because this is one of the things that makes them angry, because they believe that you can never understand how they feel, their reality. So my question here is, the intergenerational trauma of which we are trying to talk about, as an effect of Africans, or few Africans that are the descendants of colonialism or slavery. For example, we heard about what King Leopold II did in Congo,
DRC, yeah.
How the trauma, they have to. One woman was making a video that they have to cut their hands and show it to show that, really, we have really dealt with them in this kind of a thing. So do we compare this kind of trauma as a trauma that we witnessed as Africans with the kind of trauma I have just explained that happened to people where I define about the young and
Trauma is trauma. There is
we differentiate
you cannot differentiate trauma. The way if I have maybe 1,000 1,000 euros, for example, and you have 100 euros, the 1,000 euros is so valuable to me. The 100 euros is as well valuable to you, and then the 1,000 euros is stolen from me. The 100 euros is stolen from you. And then I'm lamenting about how I'm so pained that someone stole from me. And then you come and tell me, oh, you're not supposed to be, no. And then I tell you, because yours is smaller, 100 euros. Yeah. And then I say, oh, why are you complaining that 100 euros was stolen from you? Can you compare 100 euros to 1,000 euros? Your money, yours is even smaller, mine is bigger. That's what we are doing to ourselves when we do comparison. Trauma is trauma. The same way I would feel if someone were to steal from me is the same way you would feel. If I were to put my hand in fire right now, you would feel the burn. No matter your age, whether we are old or young, the same pain I would feel is the same pain you would feel if you were also to put your hand in this fire. Pain doesn't know age. Pain doesn't know, intensity, or to say, oh, this person is younger, or okay, this is, you get. So whatever we shouldn't even compare trauma. Trauma is trauma because it has changed my worldview. It has affected my psyche. The way I'm going to see the world after experiencing a traumatic event will never be the same again.
Yeah.
No, regardless, no matter what, it will never be. Some people respond to traumas differently, and then when we do comparison, when someone is crying, we're like, "Oh, stop crying!" It happens to everybody. It's not just you. It happened to, which is going back to when we talk about colonialism and be like, "Oh, people should just move on from it already. This thing happened a long time ago. Move on and let's rebuild." How do we rebuild if we do not address the places that were broken? How do you heal if you do not acknowledge that you are even in pain in the first place?
That's the problem. The first step of healing actually is being aware of the trauma itself. So if we're living in a society, right, where we're not properly taught about the events of slavery and colonialism and how it deeply impacted our way of life in multiple ways. Like the list is too long to enumerate right now, but you get what I'm saying. Like if we're not aware of these major events, but what we're taught at school is mostly based on the present moment, like things that happen in the past century, like 19th century, World War One, World War Two, Russian Revolution, Great Depression, these kind of stuff. But the important event that was the highlight of we're not talking about that. Like it creates kind of like a worldview that is like, let's say, a frame that like if you were to see the world through that frame, you will just think that these people made themselves up by themselves, right? Without any aid and without any exploitation of another group of people. And us, we're like it's kind of like we have no direction. We're just spectator of the world, and we're just subscribing to whatever the world dictates. The world dictates us, go north, we go north. And then the world say, oh, actually we were wrong about going north. It's actually south. And then we go south. So it creates a lack of reasoning for yourself. You cannot reason for yourself. You cannot have discernment about what is right or wrong, what is to the interest of me and the people that looks like me, or the people that come from where I come from, or the people that thinks the way I think or speak what I speak. You cannot have that reasoning. You just have a reasoning of, oh, I mean, you don't know any better. When you don't know any better, like,
You can't do better.
exactly. So we as Africans right now, especially the youth, which is the most potent youth in the world, like Thomas Sankara said that youth with awareness is more powerful than any nuclear bomb, nuclear weapon. And I agree with that. I agree totally. Like if you know your power, you do not ask for your power, you take it back. And I think right now in the 21st century, 2023, it's time that African people take back what is rightfully theirs, their African history that has been robbed, their authentic African consciousness, their Africanity itself. The just expressing their Africanity right now is met with questioning. Why are you doing this? Like if you wear like African clothes on a normal day, why are you doing this? Is it Halloween? I don't think it's Halloween yet. If you wanna if you wanna do some protective hairstyle, as they call it, dreadlocks. I don't even like the term dreadlocks because it has the word dread in it. But this is another thing. But locks, right? So you like a friend of let's say a friend of yours present you an African with dreadlocks to his or her parent, right? They will be shocked. Oh, a criminal. But for me, it's like, where did we why making a link between hairstyle and criminality? I mean, if hairstyle, like if being a criminal was linked to hairstyle, then I think the tribunal and asylum should stop existing and it will be all solved in the barbershops. Like a criminal, instead of going to justice, you just send him to the barbershop, Zoom, and now you're a good citizen.
All these things are like reproductions, like there is a colonial. What this is not is a different topic altogether.
yeah.
No, it's all it's all.
But
linked.
the dots are
This
linked.
kind of I mean, people who define beauty, aesthetics, and other things, they will tell you why during the colonial time how Africans were kind of made to go away from this dreadlock of retina as a sign of criminality or sign of indiscipline or sign of not being civil. People were not allowed to go to work.
Basically any negative label.
Any corporate environment, you're not allowed to go. And of course, this things translate even to today. And no, I don't want to. I hate to generalize, but few African families, you dare not bring a suitor to them with
That's what I was.
So do we see this kind of a thing as also a part of trauma?
Yeah, it's a ripple effect.
100%.
It's a ripple effect of trauma.
I think we have virtually discussed the intensity of the havoc that was wreaked by Europe on Africa. We cannot talk about it enough. It is huge. It is humongous. That it is the height of wickedness. There's no race has ever been more wicked to another race more than this ever in the history of mankind. It was just destiny that preserved Africa. Africa would have been totally eliminated.
Oh no, I would say they needed us still, regardless.
To the
they needed
extent,
us to continue to
to
build
the
their
extent that I think what remains of Africa is maybe only our skin. Every other thing is gone. Yeah, only skin. Wow. Even if it is language, where is dressing, architecture, education, politics, everything. Only our skin that that's even being done now. People are bleaching their skin to become white. People are even calling their hair to become white. So so you can see the intensity of the havoc. But your question is, yes, sir.
Please, before you continue, I want to ask specifically, because of our time, they are telling us that we have to hurry up now. But what I'm asking specifically to this is, I want you to talk more on aspect of trauma as a misrepresentation of self, misrepresentation of self, like self-identity by this kind of a colonial thing we talked about, or by cognitive empire. Like, because we talk about what happened, and of course, some of us still believe that it has never ended, this kind of colonialism. There's a cognitive empire today.
Yeah, exactly.
So because we are talking about how we can heal or alternative means.
Now, I think clearly the question is, what is the place of the African man in the global space? Is the African man having any strength? Is he a weakling? Is it inferior to other people? That to me seems to be the important question. Okay. I study Africa, and I don't know I have always been an Africanist. Africa is great. Africa is excellent. Africa is the hope of the world. But how can the African man realize this and be liberated? What we call emancipation of the African man. That is, to me, what is important. Emancipation. How do we do it? One good way to do it is what I call harnessing the wisdom of our ancestors. How did our ancestors solve problems? What are those powers that our ancestors had? How do we get those powers back and harness those powers to solve problems? Like, for example, medicine. The use of medicine. Where is our forefathers, or where are our forefathers in the area of medicine? Language, education, politics. We get all those things together, and we now say this is our own, and we begin to harness them to develop ourselves. One. Two is to search for our independence, self-dependence. That is refusing to rely on Europe. Deliberately refuse to rely on Europe and trying to liberate ourselves, and that is how to be out of trauma. The more we continue to subject ourselves to the European agenda, the more traumatic we become.
But you know that every form of resistance or every form of revolution that has happened in Africa has been, it has been the way the response from Europe has been, it has even been met with more resistance. It feels like every time Africans, we have the list, we have the names, we have people like Thomas Sankara, we have Kwame Nkrumah, and the list goes on. And this has also, I say that this is also another form of trauma on even the young ones that are looking. Because when they show you that the elders that are trying to fight for the freedom for Africans, for African people, and now they were being subjugated, silenced, exiled, killed, then how would you even be able to awaken that spirit in you to keep fighting for independence or freedom? As a matter of fact, we would say that, colonialism is over because every African country has gotten, freedom. They've given us that they signed, the colonies have already, giving us freedom. But in reality, we all know that is a lie. There is still the cognitive empire. The colonization is still deeply intrinsic in us. And anytime we even try to think about it, even us having this conversation, we have this consciousness at the back of our minds that, we have people that are our ancestors that have gone ahead of us, not even the ones that resisted slavery. Even after slavery, during colonization and after colonization, the ones that, let us fight for the emancipation of Black people, we saw the way they were treated. Now, how do we begin to retrace our steps when we've been met with even more resistance, more violence? This is also a form of trauma. And I really do not know how we can walk our way around it. We can only have these conversations, hoping that, it can awaken some things
Good
in people. We are not profiling solutions. This is just a conversation around it. So this is also another form of trauma.
What we are doing now is one of the ways.
Yes, we are in a way also.
Ordinarily, talking about it really goes a long way to solve the problem. But one good way is education. I tell you the truth. Our education should be emancipatory. You see, Plato says, man, know thyself. You see, it is better for me to know myself than for you to know me. If you know me, you can manipulate me. So I will know myself, and I will not allow you to know me as much. Let Africa begin to know herself and their potential, their power, what they can do, what they have. Let them harness what they. European has nothing. They have nothing. In fact, in Africa, you will see plantain at the back of your house. You will see palm tree. You will see orange tree. You can hardly find that one in this place. You will see many things.
Everything that's being industrialized.
Exactly. So it means we have a lot of things we have, and then we should also be able to take a stand. Appreciate ourselves. Then refuse inferiorization. I keep telling Africa, we are being shackled. I raise. If you have not come to Europe, you are not a human being.
You think that maybe until you go to Europe, then you
look at this mindset should be revisited. And the Nigerian, the African people, African political office holders should also be more emancipatory.
African.
You should be more emancipatory in your politics. You must be prepared to open people's eyes to what African have. All the energies. I told you about what is happening. What happened with this lady that stayed in. They are stealing energies from Africa. They will now use it to develop themselves here. Because you don't know about the binary tension, the binary something for computer.
From Ifa Cosmo.
from Ifa Opele system, but and stuff like that. In fact, I was in Ife sometimes. I was doing research, and a lady sat and said, "What are you coming to do here? What is this?" And tried to query me. That he mentioned a village where electricity was stolen. I don't know how far it's true. He said he mentioned a village in Ife area that they came more than 200 years ago. They stole this thing, and they now say this is electricity. And a lot of these things are like that all over the place. So let us harness what we have. Let us appreciate ourselves. In fact, let us self-esteem also matters a lot. Africa, the issue of superiority, inferiority dichotomy. African man is superior in all respect. I cannot, even naturally, the skin makes it very clear that you have dark skin already shows that you are more superior because it is covered. It is protected. Then two, I'm sorry to take the time. And I want to mention it very clearly.
Okay.
I was discussing,
It's an emotional discussion.
I was discussing sometimes the superiority of Africa. I established it during the time of COVID-19. And I argued that a people that are able to conquer disease are the most developed people on earth. COVID-19 killed thousands of hundreds of thousands in Europe and America, and it didn't do much havoc in Africa.
Oh, but they predicted that there will be dead bodies lying on
and the world was not even asking, how did Africa do it? This is where the conspiracy is. The world has never asked, how did Africa do it?
No, we don't expect the world. You remember there was this prediction, is it by Bill Gates?
By the wife.
Yes, and they said, Africa is going to suffer from
35 million people
that people will be
die.
lots of dead bodies will be on the street.
And it didn't happen.
But unfortunately for them, unfortunately for us, their prediction never happened. What they expected, that is to show you that even in the 21st century,
Exactly, Africa is
there
great.
is still that mentality of, anything bad has to happen to Africa first. We are like specimens. We are like,
I think the question is, please, I'm sorry, how did Africa escape? I mean, why? Which means they have intellect. They used their brain. Because if disease is able to kill a people, those people are inferior to those whose diseases are not able to kill. I don't know whether you got a point.
But do you think there is a biological something that prevented the penetration of the virus to Africans?
It's still the same superiority, which means we are stronger.
Well, I always avoid using terminologies like superiority and inferiority because at the end of the day, there's something about trauma that when there's this dynamics in
that
Africa,
it tend to reproduce in
you will now tend to replicate what was done to you. And I remember Kiss was asking me that why is it that when someone that was poor, when he now becomes rich, he now starts suppressing other people, forgetting where he came from. He now starts using his position now to suppress other people because now he's rich, he or she has arrived.
Before you answer that, let me ask you, why is it that some few Nigerians, when they come to Europe and they see light, they tend to press their clothes very fast before realizing that the light is very permanent?
Well, it's trauma. It's part of because you never experienced constant electricity.
Let me tell you, the world is full of tension. You have to assert your superiority. Yeah. Very, very important. When you refuse to assert it, the person who is asserting superiority will now influence you. Because it's a conflictual world we are in. And then you can assert your superiority based on certain indices. Maybe technology, maybe medicine, maybe political economic stability. These are indices people use to assert that.
But these are all metrics of Western ideologies, I would say. I would say that one thing I keep saying is that until every African experiences a spiritual decolonization, we would always replicate Western ideologies.
Because now this is where it's tricky. Intergenerational trauma. It has phases.
Because let's be realistic. Africans never colonized anyone. I would say that we never subjugated and suppressed. Yes, there were there were fights in between.
Even in Egypt, like when you said earlier that Egyptian enslaved Israelites, that is not true.
Exactly
because there is
the Romans that actually came to Egypt From the 1st century, Africa, Egypt now called Kemet. From the 1st to the 4th century, Roman Empire came to the.
No, I'm looking at the Bible now.
No, let's not use the Bible.
No, but I'm using.
We cannot use the Bible.
I'm using Bible stories.
Well,
we are the people all over the world came to stay in Egypt.
We cannot only.
And the nature of the slavery of the people of Israel in Egypt didn't demonstrate this kind of wickedness.
Speaking of the Bible,
but the thing is, like, there's evidence that this never happened.
Yeah,
like,
because speaking of the Bible, do you know that even Egypt was called a desert? It was meant to be a dark, dirty, deserted place, even in the Bible. I'm not saying we shouldn't use the Bible as reference, but the Bible should not be the only reference. And this is addressing every African. We have history books. Even many scrolls have been missing. They've been burned. We don't even have enough of our history, and many of the histories have been recorded by white European scholars,
so they have
and then they've distorted our realities. But we are beginning to revisit these things, and we know that many of these things that we hold to be true and facts, they actually are not true. I keep saying that you need discernment to even study history. Every African scholar that has ever studied history should even go back and you revisit some of those books and ask critical questions. Because most of these things are not fact. They are not true.
So I have because we are coming towards the end of our program today, but question I will say, what is the simplest advice to people or Africans or people at large, anywhere you are, people who feel they are traumatized, they've been traumatized, or they are facing trauma as a challenge in their daily lives. So what is the simplest advice? Because I've heard about people saying you need to find out what makes you happy or what you like to do. From a Eurocentric point of view, some people go to embrace the nature. When they walk outside, is a way of healing. Some people like to dance. Some people like to play music. Some play guitar. When they do such things, they use it as a healing. So, and also, while talking about it holistically, you should also include Afrikans trauma or intergenerational trauma in it. So we're starting from you, Kiswensida. What do you think is, in a succinct way, as an advice to whosoever that is facing trauma?
In my humble opinion, I think if you try to do some activities in order to cope with the pain, it won't last long until the pain will manifest itself again. And it's a sign that you really need to dive deep within yourself, face this trauma head on to the point that it no longer limits you. It's no longer a break hindering your life in a negative aspect, like you're no longer living in
fear.
In fear
Or in
suppression, and also lack of self-expression. Because we as human beings, I think one of the most beautiful qualities that we have, something that is really fundamental of our essence is self-expression. When you see someone drawing, when you see someone singing, someone dancing, working out, acting, self-expression is limitless and has many forms. And there's, I think, no such thing that is sadder than being aware that someone, like an individual, is limiting his or her ability to express her true self based on some conception of of a past event, you know? Like we as human beings, like we have like this self-expression that is innate in us, like that you see in children. You know, children are the how do you say it? Like seeing children is just the best example of
Innocence. You mean? Is that what you mean?
Self-expression.
self-expression.
Okay,
you know,
yeah.
how
No filter.
They
Yeah.
have a filter, okay.
They
like-
just like until adults tell them, no, don't say it like that, and
Okay,
try
they
to correct them.
they're
They-
very open.
Yeah.
expressive.
And sincere. They're very expressive. Okay.
Yeah, and they're like they don't care about other people opinions or eyes, because us as adults, we care about other people's eyes. What
We've been,
yeah.
So many
we've
laws.
been indoctrinated.
Yeah.
We've been. They've done some pruning and some
Yeah.
training, hardcore training, especially if you're an African child.
Yeah, like
So
the eyes
you're
of
saying
people
someone who wants to heal from trauma must be childlike.
yeah.
Okay.
And in order to be childlike, you have to be okay with the part of yourself that is ugly, the
Okay.
part of yourself that is not so, like the part of yourself that is behind closed doors.
So you have to accept your bad
Accept
part
yourself.
also.
But accepting your bad part is not just saying, "Hey, I accept you," but it's really looking at it raw. Like there's this expression like you have to grab the bull by the horn.
Okay.
It's like this. You have really you like it's kind of like, I don't know if you do this meditation. Like it's kind of like you meditate and you transport yourself mentally into this situation that you already experienced, that brought you into this discomfort, this very deep discomfort, and you try to look at this as if you're watching a movie, as if you're not actually the actor of the movie, as if you're like
Observing.
exactly from a different point of view.
Okay. To see how it is being played.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can like
it's called like detaching yourself from your experience.
Oh, okay.
so you can like intake more parameter of the situation, and from that you will not only see the situation as bad and all the adjective associated with bad, all the superlative associated with bad, but you will also see some other parts of it.
Okay.
And
Positive sides.
yeah, the lessons,
lessons.
how it transformed you. Because even though this situation was unfortunate, you made it. You're still alive, you're still breathing, you still have breath circulating through your lungs. You still have thoughts. You still have, you're still alive.
And that's something to be grateful for, at least.
Definitely. And I am in this state of mind where I think that every situation like is never only bad. You can extract some goodness out of it.
Yeah,
Okay, Judy, is your turn. Please, our viewers want to hear your good.
Well, I have a lot of things to say, but I will speak from a personal point of view, because when we say trauma, many people do not even understand what it means. And the first step to healing a wound is to acknowledge that there is a wound in the first place. If you do not acknowledge that you have a wound, you will just be going around with an open sore, or even if it's not an open sore, with a sore that has not healed completely. And I keep using this example, like, imagine someone walking around with a sore and it's stinking, and everyone can perceive it, because you have failed to acknowledge that you have a sore, a wound. You're still like, oh, no, I can still walk with it. I'm fine. I'm good.
It's not only that, you're not even noticing your own smell.
Yes, but it smells. Everyone perceives the odor. And this is what trauma is. A lot of people have said that, oh, this is who I am. This is me. People should accept me the way I am. But the truth is that is not you. This is who trauma has made you become.
And how can you know who you truly are if you fail to question exactly what are the circumstances that made yourself the you who are today?
Exactly. So you are not absolute. You are not just, you. You are this is not your real form. This is what healing does to you. Healing reveals to you who you actually, your authentic self. And this is the space, the place I have gotten to in my, in my journey of realization and self-awareness. Because there are many things that as Africans, we don't even acknowledge as trauma, because a lot of people see it as a normal thing.
It has been normalized.
It's normal. Like a lot of people are living in denial. So when you talk about it, people be like, is that what you would call trauma? That's normal. So I find it difficult to have this kind of conversations with just anyone, not because I am, discriminating them, because I just feel like my journey, my personal journey of healing it's personal to me. It shouldn't be everyone's. I do not want to react to every trigger. That means that thing is controlling me.
Yeah,
If everyone has the power to get me angry, if any little thing I get angry, I get triggered, then I am not in control of myself.
Don't you think?
Like you're basically their puppet?
Yes, because everyone has the remote over me.
Don't you think it's a suppression of trauma?
No,
Are you
it's
not
not.
suppression of your trauma?
There is a difference between avoidance and just choosing to live in peace.
Okay.
Because if you have done, this deep healing work, you would realize that everything is not happening to you. It's like when maybe something falls on my leg, I'll be like, oh, why me? The world hates me. And, I have bad luck. It's not happening to me.
Oh.
It's happening for me. Because there are lessons in every situation, in every bad situation, in every good situation, there are lessons. And if we fail to extract the lessons from them, we will keep repeating them until we learn.
Yeah.
So I have come to this place of realization that, a lot of people choose to live in denial that they are not wounded, but I will not live in denial. I acknowledge that there were situations where I have been triggered to act from a place of trauma, from a place of deep wound, because this is an unconscious reaction or response. But when I started, doing my own personal journey, I realized that, is this really the best I can do? Is this my first? Should this always be my first reaction to pain or to triggers? I'm not saying that if someone should, do something that I don't like, I'm not going to address it. But the way I am going to address it is going to be different from if I were to be unconscious. Maybe someone does something that hurts me, and before I would think that this is just that person being, natural, just wanting to hurt me. Me, everything is about me. But it's probably this person is not even aware that they have done this thing. They don't even know what they are doing. Yes. Then when I'm, correcting them or pointing them to where I have been hurt, the way I'm going to address it is not going to be the way I would have addressed it before. Because if I addressed it from a place of, pain and trigger, we would both hurt each other. If someone pisses me off and I respond and someone punches me and I punch the person back, I have every right to punch the person back if that's my first reaction. But if I can tell the person, can you please not do that again? Because if you do that again, I'm going to punch you back. That's like, I'm aware that this person is already, overstepping their boundaries. And I'm telling you, if you do it again, the consequences, you would face the consequences. And if that person now chooses to do it again, then I would react to that just to put the person in check. But if I were to every little thing, I just get angry, someone punches me, I punch the person, we just keep hurting each other. Nobody learns anything from that situation. I don't learn anything, the other person doesn't learn anything. We keep, traumatizing each other, and it keeps going on and on and on in circles like that. So when I realized that this is how the world, especially Africans, the way we've been operating from this unconscious place of, trauma, being triggered, every little thing. And then I'm like, nah, I can do things differently.
Oh.
And that's how I have chosen to live.
Oh, okay, Judy. Before I want Professor to close our program for us, but before I want to also add little questions before you give your final remark to this. I was discussing with a friend of mine who's also a psychologist, and I think he made mention about toxic positivism, like as a way people use it as a tactic to deal with trauma. Like I also mentioned, suppression of your traumas. Some people try to, or this kind of speechlessness or avoidance, try to avoid. So, but he was talking about positive, toxic positivism, like in a way, I think he's very conversant with some people in Nigeria, where you call them on phone and say, I learned you are sick. How are you doing today? Say, I'm well. It is well.
It is well. I am healed.
I'm healed because they tend not to use the negative side to qualify whatever that is happening to them, because they believe that if you use the positive and you embrace positive. So these kind of things are not yet clear with me and also for our viewers. So, Professor, in as much as you are giving our viewers the last remark or a way forward, the one beautiful last is traumatized, be it European, African, anywhere you are, you feel you are traumatized. Or Africans as like intergenerational trauma, like we that came from the shackle of colonialism or even experiencing cognitive empire today. So you also include and also dissect these kind of few things that I talk about, so that people will really eat this food we are cooking today.
The reality clearly is that there is a war. It is nothing. It is a conflict. It is a fight for power. It is a fight for space that has brought about trauma in people. In fact, one good way to deal with trauma is through resistance. If when you allow yourself to be subjugated permanently, you become traumatized permanently. When you resist trauma, that itself is the first step not to be traumatized. So I will say that the Africans should begin to resist trauma as an individual. When you are traumatized, deliberately resist trauma. Bob Marley says that until the color of a man's skin is not more superior than the color of his eyes, so that is a war. He says until the basic human rights are of equal guarantee to all without regard to race. He said that is a war. There is no way you want to suppress me and there is no war, I will not be traumatized. It is only when there is war that I will not be traumatized. I know you got a point. Africa must learn to resist trauma. How? One, be ready to assert yourself. Let it be known to the world that you are great. When somebody says you are stupid, tell the person, I'm wise. And demonstrate the wisdom.
Oh, demonstrate. I like
in all ways. I give example of my own. I say I was the poorest in the school, in the university. And everybody saw me as the most stupid, idiotic person. I couldn't speak calm in English. I was always carrying the worst position, 115, 120 position in the class. But now I'm a university teacher. So I refuse to be traumatized. There was war. Isn't it? I resisted the war and I conquered the war. I'm from the poorest. I had the poorest background on earth. I never knew there was this light until I became maybe secondary school 4. I knew there was electricity on net. But now I live in a house with electricity. In fact, I have car. That was my own deliberate energy with which I resisted trauma. You get the point? from poverty to prosperity, from ignorance to knowledge, from inferior to superior. Let African man assert himself everywhere. As an individual, as government, let every government assert itself everywhere. As a people, let African people assert itself everywhere. And let us continue to prove to the world that Africa is great. Let us resist any form of domination, whatever it will cost us. Let us continue to resist any form of domination. And in response, in fact, in high blood pressure, those who have high blood pressure, we call it bottling. When you bottle certain things, because when certain things are happening and you are not resisting, you are just bottling it, it will pile up a kind of a cancer of tumor in somebody, and when it will break, it will be so traumatic. That's why trauma really comes in. But when you resist, when you try to avoid being traumatized, you will say that you will be releasing a lot of stuff from the body system, out the baggages, and you'll be okay. Yeah. And I think that has been the reason why Africa is still what Africa is today, is because we have allowed for too many baggages. Yeah. And that's how we become the wailing animal, the crying being. The weakling, exactly. We keep crying every day and night.
Like
Africa,
too much
exactly. This is a problem everywhere. We are inferior, we are subjugated, we are slaves, we are this, we are that. Because we've never attempted to practically resist.
Break out.
To break out of it. And so, my last word, let Africa resist. The trauma emanated out of the inability of a man, of a person, to resist attack or inferiorization.
I wouldn't think we did not resist. We resisted, but there's a point where you get tired. And you want to recoup, but the moment you are recouping, you are
when you are resisting.
Don't kick a man when he's down. You see, Africa has been.
There is a word: no resist, no surrender. By the time you see, it's a continuum, really. It is a continuum. You have to be. Since you have not conquered the war continues.
Oh God! So that means we'll keep fighting wars.
What is war? I mean, I'm not talking about you know what I mean by war this time around.
Yes.
By intellectually asserting yourself. Exactly. But try and make sure that the word who you are. Let them know Let them know. What does a man know yourself?
I would even say that the world knows what Africa is. Look at all the things, the so-called civilization and development that we are enjoying today is as a result of the subjugation of the black man. We just have to resist and tell the world that this is what we are. In fact, a traumatized man is a person who resists to tell the people who he is. Thank you very much for that, and it's been an interesting conversation. I guess our next topic would talk about toxic positivism, because that's also something to address, because there's a point where you are avoiding, addressing situations, doing toxic, in the African thing, they will say, when you're feeling pain, you say, no, I am healed. It's good for you to to proclaim good things, to be positive. But at what point do you become positive? To what point do you start addressing that, I feel sick and I need help? Mm-hmm. Where do you have to get to that breaking point before you start saying, or before you start seeking, help? Because like I said, for me, healing is acknowledging that you are even in pain in the first place. But if you fail to acknowledge that you are in pain, then no matter the help that comes to you, you will never be healed, because you are saying, I'm okay, I'm well, it is well, I am healed, everything is fine with me. And deep down inside of you that everything is not fine with you, but you are just being, toxic positivity or being toxically positive. Thank you guys for listening to us, and we hope that we'll be able to give you more of these interesting conversations. Until next time, I remain Judy and Kiswensida and Mazi Anthony, and our professor here is just a guest. He would not always be here, but we would always be here.